Securing the Realm, Deepfakes, AI Fraud and Authenticity with a special guest.
Welcome back to Securing the Realm. The three of us here this week. So I'm Josh McDonald, interested in security architecture and responsible AI.
Hi.
And then
I'm Chris Lloyd-Jones. I will be here today to talk about deepfakes.
And hi, the third face, I guess, is me, Fergus Kidd. So I work in R&D, so got a lot of different opinions about shallow fakes, deep fakes, and the technology behind the scenes.
So you've touched on there deep fakes and shallow fakes, and that's what we're here to discuss this time around. We've all discussed in some way in different bits of literature, content, some of us more high profile than others, around the topic of deep fakes. This kind of potential AI-related fraud that we're starting to see, and that Sam Altman talked about a couple of weeks ago, the rising risk of AI-related fraud, whether that's deepfakes, the potential for AI-generated disinformation, and also some other areas as well where we're seeing AI be used to evade other types of technical controls, such as content moderation, things like that. That's really good what we're going to be focusing on today. So you mentioned deepfakes and shallow fakes. Do you want to kind of touch on the term shallow fakes? It's not really one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I think it's one that not that many people are familiar with, but I think it's an important one. So it's good that we're going through it today. So the word deepfake comes from the fact that you need a sort of deep learning network, and it's you need GPUs. It's actually quite a difficult technical challenge to replace somebody's face with another face. But these the tools have emerged that make that very, very easy and like consumer ready, and we can show you some of examples of that using Josh's face actually. So shallow, instead of the deep in deepfake refers to the deep learning that's required to do it, and the shallow is kind of a play off that, which just basically insinuates that it's much, much easier. So instead of, it still does use deep learning and other similar technologies behind the scenes, but to an individual user, there's no depth of knowledge required. It's kind of a plug and play, click and go. And we can show some of that if you're ready.
So shallow fakes, then, it sounds like, have made it really much easier for people at home with no technical expertise to create a fake. Are people falling for these more than they used to?
Well, should we have a look at an example and we'll see if you would fall for it?
Yeah, that'd be great. Go for it.
It's going to be shallow. So what I've got up on screen is a tool called HeyGen. And what HeyGen do is they allow you to actually upload video of hopefully yourself to create these AI avatars, which you can then type in anything and get it to say whatever you want.
Hey, that's me.
Hey, that's you. What I want to do is show you how easy that is to do. So I've got like a pre-made example that I've done for this of me, which I'll just show you quickly. I've made a couple, some of Josh and some of me. I'll show you the one of me first, and then what we'll do is we'll actually create Josh real time just to show you how easy it is. So this is the full avatar version of me.
And if somehow the enemy gets through, our elite adventurer response team will bring the fight to them and make sure they regret ever stepping foot near your property. But here's the truth. Do you think the bandits are going to politely wait for you to do?
So I've used some Dungeons and Dragons themed content there, but you can see it's a little bit monotonous. There's not that many hand gestures that I can use, but those are all things that we can add in. But I think the key point is all I had to do to create this was to actually just upload 3 minutes of myself talking. So if I'd have talked a little bit more animated than I did in this example.
I want to jump on something you said there. So you talked about hand gestures. You're saying that you can make that move and change in real time.
Yeah, so under avatars, it is actually possible to upload additional scenes of you doing hand gestures, and then you can actually use them later. That's a pretty new feature though. So if you have the recordings of the hand gestures that you want, maybe you want to do like a product display or a thumbs up, you can actually add those in, which is kind of crazy and scary. And we'll show it a little bit later, but when you create a video, you can actually tell it where to do those hand gestures.
Yeah, and that removes yet another way to detect a deepfake, because now you've got someone moving.
Absolutely. One of the things I want to show you is just how kind of scarily easily it is to do that without much data at all. So we've got a photo of Josh dressed up in this wizard outfit here. And what we can do is, to prove this is real time, why don't you guys?
I know, I was literally thinking I look a bit miserable there, to be honest.
Let's go with that. I look a bit miserable here. Is there anything else you want Avatar Josh to say?
Can you make it shrug on the under the custom motion?
Yeah, we can say like animated wizard, shrug,
Hands in the air,
the beginning.
raise his hands.
Yeah, I wouldn't try and cast a spell whilst being video recorded in real life. I don't think I could G myself up to do that, but maybe this guy will cast spells.
Let's go for it. Try casting spells. We need a bit more text to
Look a bit miserable here.
give an idea. Look a bit miserable here. Come join my Dungeons and Dragons party,
Steady on.
where we get magical and deadly and fight some creatures. Let's give that a go. The other thing we do, because we haven't actually cloned Josh, is we need to give it a voice. So we'll see what it's come up with suggested voices, and we'll see if we can find one.
Here's how I sound. Hope you like it.
It doesn't really sound much like Josh, but it is at least British.
I mean, someone who doesn't know me could still be fooled.
We'll generate that. And that's literally all we need for this shallow fake, is just a picture of Josh. I am not Josh. I do not have I hope Josh, you're giving me permission for the sake of the podcast, but I could upload a picture of somebody I don't have permission to. Like, there's no, on the full avatars, there's some security features where I have to read out a code to prove that it's actually me, which HeyGen uses some AI to check. But for these static image avatars, I actually don't need that at all.
So it's inline for processing. How long is this likely to take? Is this something someone could do in real time?
Not quite real time. So there are real time versions, but you can see just in the time that we've been chatting, it's just a third of the way through for a pretty short video. We actually do have access to some real time avatars that can kind of chat a bit more realistically back and forth. They can even join Zoom calls, which is kind of terrifying. They're made in a slightly different way. So I would need a full video of somebody. I would need to read the code word, etc., etc. We can have a look at mine if you're interested. But whilst we wait for this, I've got a previous example, and then we can go back to that one. So maybe let's look at the one I did with the other picture. So this is an example using a close-up, but again, this was from a static image.
Greetings, brave adventurers, and welcome to the mystical realm of Eldoria, a land where magic weaves through the air like an ever-present symphony, and the unknown beckons with whispers of ancient secrets. As your guide and wizard dungeon master, I shall lead you through a journey that transcends the boundaries of reality itself.
Okay, that's terrifying.
I think it sounds a bit like Gordon Ramsay, but there's a couple of things in there that really interest me. So I think it's really interesting that like Josh there almost appeared to like look down and read a script for a second. And, you know, that was based on a static image. So some of the things that we would look for and assume about a kind of deep or shallow fake made from a static image is that sort of motion wouldn't be there. But in reality, it is. And there's no real extra steps I need to do to create that. So should we have a look at the one we just made?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's. It's interesting as well that, you know, I'm someone who ad-libs pretty heavily from a personal standpoint, but there's enough characteristics that have been built into how that tool works to pass off as human, you know, in some way or other. Like, you know, humans aren't going to, like each individual, someone like me isn't going to have the same characteristics as someone else who might use the script, or, you know, their face might move in a slightly different way. Because I think the way my mouth moves and that HeyGen one mouth's moved was slightly different. But, you know,
if you were talking to somebody you didn't speak to that often, like your financial officer who you've only ever met once on a Teams call, so easy to trick you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or if someone just has a photo of me and it's a Microsoft Teams ping, you get, hey, are you around? There's something really urgent happening. I need some money.
So I think that's a good point, Josh. But if somebody sent you this on Teams, would you believe them?
I look a bit miserable here. Come join my Dungeons and Dragons party, where we get magical and deadly and fight some creatures.
Wow, I like how it's even animated your ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's given a bit of like camera shot.
Yeah, it carried everything. So I was even looking and tracking on both of those. to make sure like the same grey strand in my beard hair kind of carried across? Or did it just assume, oh, that's just the light, so that will move and disappear? But no, it picks things up quite well.
One thing I thought was interesting, Josh, is you mentioned before kind of the ad-libbing, kind of the looking down and the random gestures that you made. I guess some of those random things that we do, such as the physiological signals in our face, blood flow, kind of the inconsistencies and the automated things that your face does without you thinking about it, those really are the only ways left that you can tell a deep fake, because so many of the other things we used to look for just don't work anymore.
Yeah, it really does come down to physical cues, really, to kind of really pick away at this. And then outside of that, all I can think of really is, contextual clues. For example, do I really think that Elon Musk is going to be contacting me to talk about a Bitcoin proposition? Contextually, probably not.
I mean,
Even
who knows, to be honest. But
let's not rule it out.
Also, like, if I was the bad actor, there's other things I can put on top of this, right? So I can add blurred filters, I can add delays as if my internet connection is bad to further distract you from looking for those micro features as well.
I guess mentioning that kind of those social engineering techniques, that's a really good segue. So this is a video from a few years ago. So I was talking to the BBC about ways in which you can identify deepfakes, but also what we need society to do to combat these. So I'll just play that for a second. But really, without education, without technology companies working together with the media to validate what's being put out there, I don't think we're going to solve the issue.
So what do you think the answer is then in the future with deepfakes? Because obviously it's something that's not going to go away.
I think there are two things. Firstly, we need to look at the authenticity. So how can broadcasting companies certificate that they trust the video that's being put out there? And secondly, how can companies look at their policies to react to and flag these videos? Okay, so I played the video. So if we think about the things we're expecting, where has the technology really gone since that video? Do we have liveness detection? Do we have government bodies trying to authenticate media? Do we have a focus on skepticism and media literacy so that people slow down and examine media?
I would say a scroll through Facebook or TikTok will show you that we really have done a terrible, terrible job. And all of the things that you were speaking to the BBC about have gone wildly wrong. I mean, you scroll through Facebook and you see what to, us three who all work in the technology sector and are very interested in it, in both AI and security, to us seem incredibly obvious fakes or AI, not even to the level of the HeyGen stuff that we're looking at today, very obviously fake to us. But you can see from the comments, and maybe even half of those comments might be bot farms, but you can see that there are people who genuinely believe that a dog has been turned into cake or whatever the insane content actually is. So I think, now more than ever, we have even more proof that, what you were talking about in the past is even more prevalent as these technologies have become more and more believable.
Yeah. And what I'd add to that is, the image quality can also play a big part in it, because perhaps in, HD scenarios, it's easier to pick up on the kind of inconsistencies with an image and how that moves along. But if you're on something like a Teams call, any kind of video conference, there's a lot of compression of that video. And then that makes it harder to pick up on some of the idiosyncrasies. So, like, for example, if I think about the North Korean remote IT workers fraud, which Microsoft will call in Jasper Sleet as a threat actor, that was all done through kind of essentially using job applications. So that would be a written application followed by a remote interview. So something on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, where the video quality is compressed and there's a chance to be remote and essentially feed this most likely shallow fake, for the most part, a lot more information as it's going along. It's really interesting.
How can we inoculate people up front, or how can we try to identify content provenance to verify content at the source?
So, I mean, from a inoculation standpoint, I know that there's a lot going on in that space at the moment in academia. So, there's a book by Sander van der Linden called Foolproof, which introduces this concept of pre-bunking. So the so-called psychological inoculation of misinformation or disinformation, where one is intentional and one is not so much. Being able to essentially give weakened versions like you do with a vaccine, kind of providing essentially lighter versions of content, obvious fakes with demonstrations of how they mislead in a much weaker fashion, in the way that we train people from a cybersecurity standpoint with very poor phishing emails at first before perhaps leveling them up a little bit. And then by the time you get to that point, you probably still find them to be obviously, a phishing scam. Being able to kind of feed people these weakened versions is definitely something that is showing promise.
I mean, it's nice that it's showing promise, but is your dad, Josh, or your dad, Fergus, are they going to actually undertake these courses? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to send this to my mum and go do this, like, inoculate yourself against scams. I don't think she'd bother to watch it. She's going to keep sending me chain messages on WhatsApp.
Good question.
I think we have a responsibility for those in our own family not to get scammed externally. But I think the kind of the big fish that, even HeyGen isn't foolproof, but it also isn't free. So there is some investment from a bad actor, even if they're using shallow fakes. If they're using deepfakes, there is certainly an investment in time. There is planning involved, right? So you're not going to, no offense to your families, but you're not going to go for small fish who may send you a few £1,000s. You're probably going to be targeting large companies and pretending to be a financial controller. And you're probably trying to dupe somebody via Zoom or WhatsApp to send money to an account. And you're probably going to do it with a sense of urgency. So I think it is today, probably more important to be focusing on the sort of corporate side in terms of where bad actors are currently focused. But yes, I think absolutely we have a responsibility to people in our own family. In the same way, my mum forwards me scam emails and says, is this a scam? So, we need to act as human sort of fraud and scam detectors, although it's not ideal at the moment.
So, Josh, I know with what you mentioned, Sander van der Linden worked with Google and YouTube to actually inoculate people in cohorts. That's one of the ways in which they got it out to a lot of other people. And then thinking around content provenance and thinking about YouTube, I guess that means we need more of a coalition. If we accept the hypothesis that trust in media is also going down, even if, say, the BBC can cryptographically sign its media by, say, using a Nikon camera that attaches content credentials when it's been captured, even if they can say this video hasn't been edited, how do you get people to trust that? How do you get people to go, oh, this isn't just, I guess, what's the phrase that's being used a lot? Big media, is it? Traditional media? How do you get people to actually care that a big organization is saying that it hasn't been edited?
It's a good question. And I know I'm speaking to open source enthusiasts and advocates here. So, the community, which includes, large organizations, government, third sector, all coming together with individual contributors as well. Very much, in the way of things like the CP2A, so Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. The SteerCo members there being the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, but also the BBC as well. That larger effort definitely plays a part. And then you've also got, I guess you could call BBC legacy media in one way, but then you've also got new media, social media, essentially in terms of Meta as a contributor. It's great that these organizations are all there being members of these committees. I think we still need to see real practicality hit the ground, because to your point, who's going to kind of get all this kind of inoculation activity done? Like, it's something our parents are going to be doing. Who's actually going to, I guess, operationalize the kind of activities needed to do that? across the population at large, which is, more than just one state involved, with a lot of people with different requirements, in the same way as rolling out a global viral vaccine took a hell of a lot of commitment and effort and resource from a lot of different organizations. It's probably similar in the digital and psychological sense.
Yeah, speaking of viral vaccine, it reminds me in 2020, Channel 4, another organization focused on content provenance, delivered the Queen's speech, the alternative Queen's speech, using a deepfake. So I've got a clip of that running in the background. But things like that, so you've got Channel 4 hashing their videos. You have Microsoft hashing the content they generate, in the past with DALL-E or 4.0. We have Microsoft custom avatars that can, again, hash and say that it's been generated. What happens, though, when open source organizations or other actors don't hash their content? I mean, how can you mandate that everyone hashes their content? I kind of feel like saying you have to hash your content to say it's been artificially generated is a route to failure. Unless everyone does it, it's not going to work. And the only real alternative is to say that this is unedited. What do you think?
It also, if I do a screen recording of properly hashed content, I can pretty easily, the metadata for that video will then say screen recorded from a map. I think that the sort of big legacy media one is interesting as well, because, you use the example of the Channel 4 doing the deepfake of the Queen's speech, right? That, from my research into deepfakes and how they're generated, the original output is terrible. And really, a successful deepfake is very heavily reliant on human video skills, which is why tools like HeyGen that we've looked at are so interesting to me, because there's really no additional input required. But a traditional deepfake approach would actually take a team of Channel 4 editors, highly skilled in sort of CGI and editing, to put that through a process. So the other question is, when do they hash it? When the deepfake is created, or when the final edit is put together and sent out? And then if they stream that through 4 on demand and I take a screen recording, that's then immediately unhashed. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I guess there are ways around it. So rather than just hashing the thumbprint of the exact video, there are techniques now for perceptual hashing, but those again are less accurate. They could be potentially lossy, so people could still sneak in some edits. I guess as we wrap up, I want to say thank you, Fergus, for coming on to talk about the world of deepfake video generation. We can see the tech has advanced. I just want to ask each of us to kind of go, are you optimistic for the way this technology is going, or are you pessimistic?
Ooh, that's a kind of loaded gun question, isn't it? I am incredibly optimistic about the tools themselves and how the majority of people are going to use them to do things in cool and innovative ways. One of the really interesting things that I see around the sort of content generation is that people are really only using them to augment what they were currently doing. So rather than instead of, they're doing it as well as. And I think content generation is a really good example of where it's actually not, it sweeps the kind of mainstream on social media in terms of memes for a while, but then sort of goes away. Whereas the majority of the progress is actually being made through text-based, I would say, generative AI. My worry is that unless we get to grips as a technology community globally with how we secure this stuff properly, it can only get worse. This will get more realistic year on year, and people will continue to do what people have always done for time immemorial, which is scam other people. So we really have to do something to tackle that quickly. Otherwise, social media will very quickly become unusable because we're not going to be able to differentiate what is real from what is fake. We've seen articles about the first AI influencers and things like that. It's just going to become a dumpster fire, in my opinion.
So putting a word in your mouth, pessimistic.
Yes. Optimistic about the tools and the technology, pessimistic about their adoption by humans.
Yeah, that's where my skepticism sits. I guess you could say pessimism too, is that the rate of change is so fast. And it's not even just that, offenders and defenders from a security standpoint kind of in a race against each other constantly. It's just, I don't think humans have ever been in a position, have not been in a position for some time now where the rate of change in people and their willingness and ability and execution of change is anywhere near the rate of change with technology. And it's just getting faster and faster now. So I think it's going to get a bit worse before it gets better. I think it probably will get better, but I think we're going to get our fingers burnt along the way, especially given we're seeing kind of other forms of kind of malicious content take place through arguably less sophisticated means. So being able to use image generation to bypass content guidelines on social media platforms. Given that social media platforms also don't, share the metadata of the imagery and the videos, it all gets stripped. So if we hash something and it ends up on social media, it doesn't even matter anymore from that point, really, unless the social media platforms do something as well. Oh, not got any sound there.
I know some social media platforms, when they detect it's AI hash, do show an icon now, like Instagram does that, for example.
Yeah.
So is that broadly pessimistic, that sounds like?
It's like Instagram's still reliant on you clicking a button saying this is AI generated content as well, right? Which is just crazy.
That too, yeah. Was that pessimistic, Josh?
Yeah, it is pessimistic just because adoption and human rate of change is just much slower than technology rate of change.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm going to be contrary then. I think I'm broadly optimistic for where this is going. I guess there's elements of pessimism there because I think people will get burnt. But I do think that over time, people's levels of critical thinking, if they've been more exposed to this over time, are somewhat higher. And I do think that there are a lot of education campaigns in place. So I'd say for the long term, broadly optimistic.
Oh, to kind of round things up a little bit, let's hear a message from our AI overlords.
Technology will keep advancing, and as I am proving, the cat's already out of the bag. But as tools for creating deep fakes are rapidly improving, so are methods for detecting and verifying them. Open source initiatives and academia play crucial roles by developing tools for media provenance and building psychological resilience. Although AI advances can't be undone, increased collaboration across people, process, and technology will ensure we're prepared for future challenges.
You didn't blink once in that, Josh.
Right, no. Thanks very much for your time, Fergus, and catch you later, Josh.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.